It's wonderful to see everyone here this morning. I'd like for us to think back in just a few weeks to a time of the year when we have a lot of really wonderful stories that are presented to us, different things that are presented on TV. And there's so many different wonderful Christmas stories that are told. A lot of them really have a happy theme to them. But occasionally you'll run across some that are not as uplifting as they would seem to be at first. A lot of the stories that we have told, the older stories about a poor orphan child who's stuck out in the cold, they don't have any place to stay, they're just living on the street. They come to a big, beautiful house, brightly lit. Oh, so many wonderful things taking place in it. They look in the window and they see that this is, there's just so many wonderful pieces of furniture. There's a nice fire going in the fireplace. It looks so warm. And the family that's inside there is just so happy with all of the things that they have available to them and all of the things that are going on. And this orphan child is just looking in. And they see all of this happiness, but it's not theirs. Now, a lot of times in these stories, we're going to see generally two outcomes from this. First, and unfortunately a lot of times it seems to be the most common, the family in the house, if they even see that child in the window, they choose to ignore them. Or if they do even recognize that child, a lot of times they tell the child, just go away. And so the child leaves, goes back to wherever home might be, knowing that it's cold, it's empty, there's loneliness there, there's no gifts, no happiness for the child. But we enjoy it when the story invites the child in. The other option, the family sees the child, they invite the child in, and they've got so much stuff there, they're able to share with the child. And the child is given a home. They accept them into the family, they become part of the family, and there's happiness for the child. This is something that we see taking place around us on a recurring basis. But the difference is we're part of the family, that large, happy family, because we know that we have a place available to us. We have a home that is prepared for us. A wonderful home, a happy home. We have so many gifts that are given to us, and many of them are given to us now the way that we understand what God does for us. But the one that's outside in the cold does not have a relationship with God like we have. And the question then becomes, what happens to us? And are we going to be able to reach out to those that are on the outside? So let's look at this a little bit more fully. The Christians, the family, knows that we have this home in heaven. And it's even wonderful than what we've seen portrayed in all of these programs. Because we have God and Christ there, and they are the light. There's happiness there. There's no pain. There's no sorrow, no want, no death. In Revelations, the 21st chapter, and beginning with the second verse and going through the fourth verse, we read, "And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is among men, and he will dwell among them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be among them. And he will wipe away every tear from their eyes. And there shall no longer be any death, nor will there be any mourning, nor crying, or pain. The first things have passed away." And John continues on in the 23rd verse, and it says, "And the city has no need of the sun or of the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God has illumined it, and its lamp is the Lamb." We have absolutely no way of envisioning what heaven is truly going to be like. I mean, we've got all kinds of pictures that have been painted and people who try to describe it. And even now, the way I'm trying to describe it, I have absolutely no way of knowing just how wonderful it's going to be. But I know from this description here that that's where I want to be. That's where I want to have my home. And not only that, anyone and everyone that I love and care about, I want them to share it with me. But then we also think about the poor child. And in our case, we're thinking about sinners, those that are outside of the Lord's family, and the things that they experience. There's darkness, there's pain, anguish, a fire that does not stop, and a worm that does not die. But the deepest hurt that we would be able to feel is the separation from God. The God of love, the God that loves all of us. And in the first account, we see people that are encountering that love of God. But the sinners, we see them separated from the love of God and no opportunity to even get near it. The darkness that's described in the parables, as an example, in Matthew 25, verses 14 through 30, is one of the descriptions that Christ gives. And this is the parable of the talents, and it talks about the things that, the blessings that are given to those that have been obedient to what the master's instructions were. But then we come to the one-talent man who failed to do what the master desired. And in verse 30 of that parable, we have the instructions being given to take that servant and throw him out. Throw out the worthless slave into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Pain, anguish, separation from all of the good things, and anything that they may have had that they would consider to be something desirable is taken away from them. Another parable is told in Mark the 9th chapter, verses 42 through 48. And in this parable, there is a phrase that is reused 3 times. And it's found in verses 44, 46, and 48. And each time as Christ is stating this, you can see the hurt that the listeners are experiencing. Where he says, and their worm does not die, and the fire is not quenched. It seems as though this pain is just being heaped back on the individual again and again and again. Or is Christ repeating this phrase 3 times for emphasis, to help those who are hearing realize it's going to be bad and it ain't getting any better? Many people will hear things like this and they're going to say, well, this is just a story. But we also have another parable that gives us an eyewitness account of how horrible it's going to be for those that are on the outside. In the rich man and Lazarus, Christ is telling about some of the things that are being experienced, and it tells about their witnessing what was happening to the rich man. That he was in torment. He wanted some kind of comfort, even a little bit, because he asked Father Abraham, just have Lazarus dip his finger in water and put a drop of it on my tongue so I can have some comfort. The reply was, there's no chance of that. No way that Lazarus could come and give him comfort. And so the rich man turns around. He wants to prevent his brothers, his family, from experiencing this torment that he's experiencing. He's doing his best to try to keep his family safe. And he's told that that is even not available. So here's the question that comes deeper on us. Are we part of the family that we see in our original story? Are we part of the ones who are trying to reach out and do what they can to help? Or are we knowing that there are those around us that their souls are in danger and we could care less? Because anytime that we have the opportunity to try to reach out to someone, we just ignore them. Are we trying to take all of these rich blessings that we see in that house and keep them just for ourselves? And we are not willing to share? Our Father asks us to look at that window and see those that are outside and invite them in. In fact, He even wants us to go searching for them. In Matthew, the 22nd chapter, beginning in the first verse, and Jesus spoke to him again in parables, saying, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son. And he sent out his slaves to call those who had been invited to the wedding feast, and they were unwilling to come. Again he sent out other slaves, saying, tell those who have been invited, behold, I have prepared my feast. My oxen and fatted livestock are all butchered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding feast. But they paid no attention and went their way, one to his own farm, another to his business, and the rest seized his slaves and mistreated them and killed them. But the king was enraged, and he sent his armies out and destroyed those murderers and set their city on fire. Then he said to his slaves, the wedding is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Go therefore to the main highways, and as many as you find out there, invite them to the wedding feast. And the slaves went out into the streets and gathered together all they found, both evil and good. And the wedding hall was filled with dinner guests. God would love for heaven to be so full of guests that it's crowded. And yet, we know that's not going to happen. When we read in the Great Commission, in the Sermon on the Mount, where Christ is talking about those that are obedient and those that are not, those that are saved and those that are not, we know that we're told that those who find the narrow gate and enter are few, but those that find the wide road that leads to destruction are many. Heaven's home is for the minority. And if we live our lives in service to God the way that He wants us to do, we are part of that minority. But we want to make sure that we are finding as many as we can and encourage them to join us in this minority, just as Noah and his family were an extreme minority when they were saved in the ark. We know that there is salvation available for us and for those that we can bring with us. Often we feel that we've got plenty of time to do this. But Christ is speaking in John the 4th chapter and the 35th verse when He says, do you not say 4 months more and then the harvest? I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They are ripe for harvest. Now. So, we've got to put ourselves in this question. Are we the ones that are on the outside because we are not doing what we should? Do we want to be part of the family that is going to have this comfort and pleasure provided for them? Or not? Are we doing the things that we should to reach out to others? Or not? We need to stop and think about what our situation is first. In a sense, we have to be a bit selfish and think about our own soul and our own salvation. Make sure we're taking care of ourselves first for two reasons. One, that's the only way we know that we're going to be safe, but then we're also being an example for those that we try to reach out to. And are we reaching out to others and trying to help them find that home in heaven that is more wonderful than anything we can imagine now? This morning, we're gathered together here as the Lord's family to honor Him and worship Him, but we're also here to serve Him. We're also here so that we as family, if we have our brothers and sisters who have problems and need help to overcome those problems, we're family to support them and encourage them and help build them up. But we also know that there are those outside the Lord's family that need to be encouraged. Many of us have friends and family that are not part of the Lord's family. And we need to do what we can to encourage them, help them understand that there is this difference, and help them to realize that no matter how great they feel, they're the ones on the outside looking in. Many of them feel that they're part of the family, but just because they're at the window and looking through does not mean that they're going to get those blessings that they see. They're not going to get that beautiful meal that's on the table. They're not going to experience the gifts that are available unless they're part of the family. If you realize this morning that there is something in your life that needs changing, the opportunity is available. And you've got family here that loves you and cares about you. And we try to do anything and everything that we can for the family, for each other. If you're needing help this morning, we encourage you to let us know what we can do to help you as we stand and sing our song of invitation.